And I so briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she have to sleep in the office. So I work hard like it. I mean, every waking hour. That's the thing I would say. If you particularly if you're starting a company, and I mean, if you do the simple math, say like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week, and then work that all those things improve the odds of success. I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve you will achieve in 4 months. What it takes them a year to achieve. What was your biggest failure and how did it change you? We almost did die at SpaceX actually. So I budgeted for 3 flights. I mean, technically I did have a plan where I had the money from PayPal. I had like about 180 million from PayPal. I thought, I'll allocate half of that to SpaceX and Tesla and Solar City, and that should be fine. I'll have 90 million, like that's lots. But then what happened is things cost more and took longer than I thought. So I had a choice of either put the rest of the money in or the companies are going to die. So I ended up putting all the money in and borrowing money or rent from France. 2008 was brutal. 2008 we had the third consecutive failure of the Falcon rocket for SpaceX. Tesla almost went bankrupt. We closed our financing around 600 p.m. Christmas Eve 2008, it was the last hour of the last day that it was possible we would have gone bankrupt 2 days after Christmas. SpaceX is alive by skin of its teeth, so is Tesla. If things just gone a little bit the other way, both companies would be dead, and I like one of the most difficult choices I've ever faced in life was in 2008. I think I had like maybe $30 million left, or 30 or 40 million left in 2008. I had two choices. I could put it all into one company, and then the other company would definitely die, or split it between the two companies. But if I split it between the two companies, then both might die. And when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating something or building something, it's like a child. And so it's like, which one am I going to let one starve to death? I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I split the money between the two. Fortunately, thank goodness. They both came through. Tesla really faced a sever teats threat of death due to the Model 3 production RAM. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die. And it was extremely difficult to solve them. How close to death did you come within single-digit weeks, 22 hours a day, like how many I working? Yeah, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in work in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop. You ever worry about yourself imploding, like just too much? Absolutely. I think failure is bad. I don't think it's good. But if something's important enough, then you do it, even though the risk of failure high. Were you a little naive when you thought I can easily build an electric car and a rocket? I didn't think it would be easy. Like I said, I thought they would probably fail. But like creating a company is almost like having a child. So it's sort of like, how do you say your child should not have food? So once you have the company, you have to feed it and nurse it and take care of it, even if it ruins your music. Yeah, but I suppose there was some tough times in 2008, end of 2008. How did you get through that period of crisis? Yeah, we just break for a second, sure. Of course you want to wait a little while, and I sure up it was worth it. Sure up. So me sure up it was worth it. Well, there's a ton of failures along the way. That's for sure. Like I said, as I said, for SpaceX, first 3 launches failed, and we're just barely able to scrape together enough parts and money to do the fourth launch. That fourth launch had failed. We would have been dead, so multiple failures along the way. I tried very hard to get the right expertise in. For SpaceX, I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones. Well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures when you had that third failure in a row. Did you think I need to pack this in? Never. Why not? I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated. There are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight in the way that you're developing it. And I wonder what you think of that. I was very sad to see that. Because those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here, and I think that would change their mind. They inspired you to do this, didn't they? Yes, and to see them casting stones in your direction. It's difficult. Did you expect them to cheer you on? So they hope they would. Something that can be helpful is fatalism. some degree. If you just accept the probabilities, then that diminishes fear. In starting SpaceX, I thought the odds of success were less than 10%. And I just accepted that actually probably I would just lose everything. But that maybe we would make some progress if we could just move the ball forward. Even if we died, maybe some other company could pick up the avion and move and keep moving it forward. So that would still do some good. Yeah, same with Tesla. I thought the odds of a car company succeeding were extremely low in creating these companies. We thought that we would be successful. I thought that the most likely outcome was failure. But it was still worth doing, even though the odds of success were low. In fact, even for SpaceX, originally what I started doing was not creating a rocket company, but actually was going to do a small mission to M, which was just a philanthropic mission where you would send a small greenhouse with seeds and dehydrated gel and would, upon landing, hydrate the gel. And you'd have this cool picture of green plants on a red background. And the public tends to respond to precedence and superlative. So this will be the first lap on Mars furthest of life have traveled. And you'd have this great money shot of green plants on the red background. So, yeah, I thought that would get people's attention. So, but the expectation for that was no return. So I thought we wouldn't get any, just spend the money on that, and it wouldn't happen if you're creating a company or if you're joining a company. The most important thing is to attract great people. So either you would join a group that's amazing that you really respect, or if you building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all the companies is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so, depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So, do everything you can to gather great people. If you're creating a company, then I say focus on signal over noise. A lot of companies get confused. They spend money on things that don't actually make the product better. So, for example, at Tesla, we've never spent any money on advertising. We put all of the money into R&D and manufacturing and design to try to make the car as good as possible. I think that's the way to go. So for any given company, just keep thinking about, are these efforts that people are expanding, are they resulting in a better product or service? And if they're not, stop those efforts starting a business. I'd say number one is have a high pain threshold. There's a friend of mine who's got a good saying, which is that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Okay, that's generally what happens, because when you first start a company, there's lots of optimism and things are great. And then so happiness at first is high, then you encounter all sorts of issues, and happiness will steadily decline, and then you'll go through a whole world of hurt. And then eventually if you succeed, and in most cases you will not succeed. And Tesla almost didn't succeed, came very close to failure. Then if you succeed, then after a long time, you'll finally get back to happiness. You got to make sure that whatever you're doing is a great product or service. It has to be really great. And I go back to what I was saying earlier, where if you're a new company, I mean, unless it's like some new industry or new market, that if it's an untapped market, or then you have more ability to this, the standard is lower for your product and service. But if you're entering anything where there's an existing marketplace against large entrenched competitors, then your product or service needs to be much better than theirs. It can't be a little bit better, because then you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, and they say, why would you buy it? As a consumer, you're always going to buy the trusted brand unless there's a big difference. So a lot of times, entrepreneur will come up with something which is only slightly better. And can't just be slightly better. It's got to be a lot better. A well thought out critique of whatever you're doing is as valuable as gold. And you should seek that from everyone you can. But particularly your friends, usually your friends know what's wrong, but they don't want to tell you, because they don't want to hurt you. It doesn't mean your friends are right, but very often they are right. And you at least listen very carefully to what they say, and to everyone. If you're looking for, basically, you should take the approach that you're wrong. That you, the entrepreneur, are wrong. Your goal is to be less wrong advice. I'd give to people starting company, to entrepreneurs in general, is really focus on making a product that your customers love. And it's so rare that you can buy a product and you love the product when you bought it. That there are very few things that fit into that category. And if you can come up with something like that, your business will be successful. For sure, I think really and an obsessive nature with respect to the quality of the product is very important. So being obsessive compulsive is a good thing in this context. Really liking what you do, whatever area that you get into. given that, even if you're the best, there's always a chance of failure. So I think it's important that you really like whatever you're doing. If you don't like it, life is too short. I'd say and also if you like what you're doing, you think about it even when you're not working. I mean, it's something that your mind is drawn to. And if you don't like it, you just really can't make it work. I think when I was young, I didn't really know what I was going to do. When I got older, people kept asking me, but then eventually I thought that the idea of inventing things would be really cool. And the reason I thought that was because I read a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, which said that a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that's really true. If you go back, say, 300 years, the things that we take a efficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that's really true. Being able to see over long distances, being able to communicate, having effectively with the internet in times past. In fact, I think it actually goes beyond that, because there are many things that we take for granted today that weren't even imagined in times past. They weren't even in the realm of magic. So it actually goes beyond that. So I thought, well, if I can do some of those things, basically, if I can advance technology, then that's like magic, and that would be really cool. And I had sort of a slight existential crisis, because I was trying to figure out, what does it all mean? Like, what's the purpose of things? And I came to the conclusion that if we can advance the knowledge of the world, if we can do things that expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we're better able to ask the right questions and become more enlightened, and that's really the only way forward. So I studied physics and business, because I figured in order to do a lot of these things, you need to know how the universe works, and you need to know how the economy works. And you also need to be able to bring a lot of people together to work with you to create something, because it's very difficult to do something as an individual if it's a significant technology. So I originally came out to California to try to figure out how to improve the energy density of electric vehicles, basically, to try to figure out if there was an advanced capacitor that could serve as an alternative to batteries. And that was in '95. And that's also when the internet started to happen. And I thought, well, I can either pursue this technology where success may not be one of the possible outcomes, which is always tricky, or participate in the internet and then be part of it. And I think maybe it's helpful to say one of the things that was important there in the creation of PayPal was kind of how it started. Because the initial I thought was with PayPal was to create an agglomeration of financial services. So you have one place where all of your financial services needs would be seamlessly integrated and work smoothly. And then we had like a little feature which was to do email payments. And whenever we'd show the system off to someone, we'd show the hard part, which was the agglomeration of financial services, which was quite difficult to put together. Nobody was interested. Then we'd show people email payments, which was actually quite easy, and everybody was interested. So we focused on email payments and really try to make that work, and that's what really got things to take off. But if we hadn't responded to what people said, then we probably would not have been successful. So it's important to look for things like that and focus on them when you see them, and correct your prior assumptions going from PayPal. I thought, well, what are some of the other problems that are likely to most affect the future of humanity? It really wasn't from the perspective of what's the Rand hoarded best way to make money, which is okay. But it was really what I think is going to most affect the future humanity. So I think the biggest terrestrial problem we've got is sustainable energy, but the production and consumption of energy in a sustainable manner. If we don't solve that this century, we're in deep trouble. And then the other one being the extension of life beyond Earth to make life multiplanetary. When I started SpaceX, initially I thought that, well, there's no way one could possibly start a company. I wasn't that crazy. But then I thought, well, what is a way to increase NASA's budget? That was actually my initial goal. So obviously the financial outcome from such a mission would probably be zero. So anything better than that was on the upside. So I actually went to Russia 3 times to look at buying a refurbished ICVM. And I can tell you it was very weird going there in 2000, late 2012, 2002, going to the Russian rocket forces. And I'd like to buy 2 of your biggest rockets. But you can keep the nuke. And after making several trips to Russia, I came to the conclusion that actually my initial impression was wrong about, because my initial thought was, well, that there's not enough will to explore and expand beyond Earth and have a Ms. base and that kind of thing. But I came to the conclusion that was wrong. In fact, there's plenty of will, particularly in the United States, because the United States is a nation of explorers, of people who came here from other parts of the world. I think the United States is really a distillation of the spirit of human exploration. So after my third trip, I said, okay, what we really need to do here is try to solve the space transport problem, and started SpaceX. And this was against the advice of pretty much everyone I talked to. My one friend made me sit down and watch a bunch of videos of rockets blowing up. Let me tell you, he wasn't far wrong. It was tough going there in the beginning, because I'd never built anything physical. I mean, I'd built like little model rockets as a kid and that kind of thing, but I'd never had a company that built anything physical. So I had to kind of figure out how to do all these things and bring together the right team of people. We did all that, and then failed 3 times. It was tough going, because thing about a rocket is that the passing grade is 100%. You don't get to actually test the rocket in the real environment that it's going to be in. So I think the best analogy for rocket engineering is like if you want to create a really complicated bit of software, you can't run the software as an integrated whole, and you can't run it on the computer it's intended to run on. But the first time you put it all together and write it on that computer, it must run with no bugs. At the first launch, I was picking up bits of rocket in the launch site. It was a bit sad, but we learned with each successive flight, and were able to, eventually with the 4th flight in 2008, reach orbit. And that was also with the last bit of money that we had. So we got the Falcon 1 to orbit, and then began to scale that up to the Falcon 9, which is about an order of magnitude more thrust. It's around 1 million pounds of thrust, and we managed to get that to orbit. And then developed Dragon spacecraft, which recently was able to dock and return to Earth from the space station. So it's a huge relief. Still can't quite believe it actually happened. But there's a lot more that must happen beyond this in order for humanity to become a spacefaring civilization and ultimately a multi-planet species. And that's something I think it's vitally important. And then I hope that some of you will participate in that, either at SpaceX or at other companies, because it's just really one of the most important things for the preservation and extension of consciousness. It's worth noting, as I'm sure people are aware, that the Earth has been around for 4 billion years, and civilization, at least in terms of having writing, has been around for 10 years, and that's being generous. So it's really somewhat of a tenuous existence that civilization and consciousness, as we know it, has been on Earth. And I think I'm actually fairly optimistic about the future of Earth. So I don't want to sort of people have the wrong impression that I think we're all about to die. I think things will most likely be okay for a long time on Earth, but not for sure, but most likely. But even if it's sort of 99% likely, a 1% chance is it's still worth spending a fair bit of effort to ensure that we backed up the biosphere. You have planetary redundancy, if you will, and so I think it's really quite important. And in order to do that, there's a breakthrough that needs to occur, which is to create a rapidly and completely reusable transport system to Mars, which is one of those things that's right on the borderline of impossible. But that's sort of the thing that we're going to try to achieve that with SpaceX. When I was a kid, I was wondering kind of what's the meaning of life? Like, why are we here? What's it all about? And I came to the conclusion that what really matters is trying to understand the right questions to ask. And the more that we can increase the scope and scale of human consciousness, the better we are able to ask these questions. So I think that there's certain things that are necessary to ensure that the future is good. And some of those things are in the long term, having long-term sustainable transport and sustainable energy generation, and to be a spacefaring civilization. And for humanity to be out there among the stars and be a multi-planetary species, I mean,